Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beef Loaf. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selection of pizzas and pastas, as well as sandwiches and salads of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday nights only special, one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order at 3 p.m. or later, and you can get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but at their normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery needs, or to cater your next party. You can also call 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. This show is also powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid, and that's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest... He's the editor-in-chief of Sox on 35th and the star of the Sox on 35th podcast. Sorry about that, Duke. Jordan Lazowski, welcome back to the Au Jus, my friend. You're muted. You did perfect etiquette for the intro, and then you forgot to unmute yourself. Because I appreciate that. Jordan, almost no one does that. I'll be reading the intro, and I can hear them banging around and shit. I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to mute yourself, which you did beautifully. I appreciate your etiquette, and then you started talking, and you forgot.
Yeah, no, I was so excited about the star of the Sox on 35th podcast piece. I was ready to have that ready, clipped, and everything for Duke, because we're recording tonight, too. I'm very excited about that. So, but thanks for having me on.
That's good. It's good to talk to you again. It's been a minute since I've had you on here, and we're at the quarter pole of the season. This is usually the part of the year where I start like analyzing stuff, and as I was mentioning to the boys on the 108 podcast, baseball season is a long ass season, and just like 25% in for me is where I start really looking at things like, okay, what's going on here? We've gotten to the point where we're so reactive to everything these days, where it's like one series and everyone's going crazy, and shit changes so quickly that I wanted to wait till now to have some of these discussions. So I wanted to ask you some micro questions that have macro impacts on the White Sox. And maybe have you sit in Chris Getz's shoes for some of these decisions. You game for that, my friend?
I'm always game for anything. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. First question for you is, what would you choose to prioritize between now and July 16th? That's the All-Star game. That's Tuesday, the All-Star game. Would you prioritize winning 2024 games or finding veterans homes on other rosters, meaning like the Tommy Phams of the world? Would you be looking to get them off of this roster as soon as possible and cashing in those chips? Or when we get to around the All-Star break, are you still trying to win with this group a little bit?
It's a hard question. I think Sox fans are so frustrated right now that they just want this to be the worst team ever to play in the history of baseball. It's like, okay, in a normal season, maybe fine. I get it. This is a season where they could lose all 162 and still pick 10th in the draft.
Right.
So there's no value in being that bad, but at the same time, there's no value in being the 11th or 12th pick, and you did it all with veterans. So it's a hard place to be. I think my perspective on it is, this team sucks. At least you hope.
Right.
The realization is there. And because of that, you need to make future-oriented moves. Now, some of these players you might want to move right away. Like Robbie Grossman was an interesting one. Just like, as soon as you get something that, hey, I like this name, let's move. Yeah. Tommy Pham, I might wait a little bit. Chris Flexen would be someone like I would have moved him if the interest that was rumored was real. I would have moved him.
He'd have been gone for you like that.
Yeah, I didn't know what people thought. Maybe I was wrong, but so far it's kind of been the back and forth of it.
Yeah.
But with these guys, for me, it gives no value in a bunch of veterans being the guys who help this team get better. But at the same time, it's hard. Like I said, you don't want them to be terrible either.
Right.
So it's a really weird place to be. I always default to, if this team and these players aren't going to be part of this next wave, move on, give what you can for them, try and keep yourself competitive somehow, because either way, you're picking 10th. So you might as well try and be decent while not mortgaging the future.
Yeah, agreed. And then we have some tradesmen in the comments here, and so I was looking at it like this: you don't want to just throw all the young guys out there, and you have no journeyman level people that like actually show them How does this work? Or play at a competent level so they're not all thrown to the sharks and they're not kind of jumping into like, I don't know what I'm doing and no one around me knows what they're doing. You know, it's kind of a tough spot, especially if you're going to be bringing along young players, which is, at least on the pitching side, looks like it's going to be inevitable pretty soon. I don't know how soon exactly, but it seems like that's going to kind of be the approach, is that some of these guys are coming, you know?
And, you know, I haven't been terribly complimentary of Chris Getz. I will be the first to say that. What I have noticed, and again, maybe it's me giving him too much credit, I do like so far the strategy that he's employed with Brian Ramos, even though that was due to injuries, him needing to be up, and also Nastrini and Cannon. Give them a little bit of a taste of it to get there, get their feet wet, feel like they need to work on something, maybe talk with Bannister more and more and Katz more and more on a day-to-day basis, and then go back to the minors and work on some things and come back up. I like that idea of sprinkling them in here and there. Like we've seen what happens when maybe a guy's not totally ready, could use a little bit more time, the Andrew Vaughns of the world. We've seen where it's just not a total benefit to throw them to the wolves. But with AAA being the way it is nowadays, there's probably still a benefit to seeing the major league pitching, learning kind of where you're at, and then going back down. So, you know, like you're saying, mix in those young guys, and I kind of like how they've done it. I was a little worried about how they were going to do. That was my biggest thing. You sign all these veteran guys. I'm like, what's your plan? But the plan seems to be taking a little bit more shape, at least in my mind, and I do kind of like that.
I was actually going to bring that up as a comment. To me, the plan was always protect these young guys by having these veterans around as long as we need them. And then when we don't need them anymore, or when we have a chance to like give them a little debut, I like that. And I agree with you on the just give them a little taste of the majors, because some guys, they'll sink. Like you're talking about Andrew Vaughn was here too soon, didn't get enough seasoning, and that I don't know that ruined him, but he just hasn't been good enough.
Correct.
And on the other side of the spectrum, it didn't ruin him. But Dylan Cease got pushed here pretty early, too, just because they were in so much need. And he probably could have used a little more seasoning, a little more time. He wouldn't have had the year and a half worth of struggle. He would have kind of probably jumped in, you know, a little taste here or there. He would have jumped in and been a monster right away. But they didn't afford him the chance to do that. And so I in a way, I kind of like the approach. And I think it's starting to show itself. It'll be interesting to see, you know, if he continues to follow through on that even next year. A year where maybe he expects them to be a marginally better, that he doesn't rush anyone, that he is still careful with these guys.
Right. It's just certain pieces. It's you're interested in the development. Yeah, I know how they're going to handle the Colson Montgomerys of the world. It's those guys that maybe don't crack the top 100, but are still probably complementary pieces, kind of like the Cannons, the Nastrinis. Nastrini's a little bit different. Cannon's definitely in that ilk.
Yeah.
Of where are they going to fall exactly in terms of do you push them, do you not? The hitters are always the more worrisome one for me, just because if you look at the White Sox history, they don't have a great track record of doing that, especially on the hitting side of things. So I'm a little bit more concerned there and watching it a bit more how they handle like Montgomery, Ramos, guys like that. But it's still encouraging to see you move up, you come down, and you're kind of working with it. So.
Yeah. I love it. Speaking of Colson Montgomery, he's rated the ship in AAA. The beginning of the year was a little brutal for him, but I mean, those types of things happen. And he's starting to hit for power. He's taking his walks. He's looking like Colson Montgomery these days. However, in Chicago, Paul DeJong, last I checked, was second in position player FWAR. And so if you're looking at this, how do you determine when it's time for a promotion for Colson Montgomery? Because he's starting to look ready. He's at the highest level that you can go. And one of the White Sox greatest utilities this year is plate appearances or innings for anyone who needs them.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing you look at is service time. And no, I'm just kidding. But the reality is, like, I don't view it so much from the standpoint of, you know, well, Paul DeJong's really good. There are other places for him to get innings. Like second base is a black hole currently. Right. And like Nicky Lopez hasn't been great defensively, hasn't been good offensively. And it didn't seem like the plan was to make him the starting second baseman to start the year, and now they're kind of there. So,
I was gonna say, they fell into it. They tried to give Lenyn Sosa a chance there, and it just didn't take. Like they would have liked for him to not be the starter, but the other guys just haven't come through.
And now they're at this point where, now he's the starter. Do you give DeJong the opportunity to stay in the lineup every day, keep his bat there, play second base, see what happens, and kind of mentor Montgomery? I think there's a potential value add in that aspect of, hey, keep him around, make sure he can still get his at-bats, because we might do the Brian Ramos thing and send him back to AAA or AA. And we might do the Nick Nastrini, Jonathan Cannon thing. We send him back. We don't want to be stuck there, and we decide we need to send him back down, and then what happens? Because you see guys like, and it's a larger point about just minor leagues in general right now, you see guys like Jackson Holiday come up and strike out 50% of the time.
Right.
Triple A and to the majors, and there's so many articles about it now. Like, the gap is continuing to grow, and it's going to be harder for guys to find their footing in the major leagues. They still need that fallback option. And it's not to say every single prospect is going to come up and struggle, but I'm saying if the Jackson Holidays of the world, that's a good test case of he just looked terrible.
Right. He was overmatched.
Prospect in baseball. You're still going to need that fallback option for Montgomery. Even if you never use it, you're still going to need it. Now, the question of when he's going to be ready, I don't necessarily think like we were totally convinced Nick Nastrini was ready or Jonathan Cannon was ready.
They got opportunities when an opportunity presented itself. It wasn't they pushed everyone out of the way and they're here.
Correct.
And Colson isn't quite doing that either yet, but he does look like he looks like the last month-ish. He looks good. Like he looks like the guy, you know?
And it's like, you know what, if the opportunity opens and maybe Nicky Lopez gets hurt or they're done playing Zach Remillard for the 500th time or whatever, like it feels like you can squint and see the opportunity. So maybe they're just waiting for the ability to say, okay, we have the space to give him some run time.
Right.
I don't mind trying it in the next couple weeks, see how it goes before the All-Star break and reassess at the All-Star break if you want to keep him with the team for the second half. I'd say maybe give him enough plate appearances to make an assessment before you go into the second half of the season.
Yeah, makes sense. Senior Sox in comments says, Sosa turns into Barry Bonds in AAA and then turns into Andrew Vaughn in the majors. Yeah, that's exactly the point. There are a lot of those guys who crush, and especially in a great ballpark like Charlotte, they crush, and then when they get here, it's like they've never seen Major League pitching, and they just have no clue. And so I like that approach, Jordan. I'm interested to see, though, like sometimes with the big prospects, you bring up Jackson Holiday as a counterexample to this. Mm-hmm. Sometimes with the big prospects, though, they're scared to push those guys back down unless it's something like that, right? Like he was totally overmatched, so this was like a no-brainer. But a lot of times teams will let those bigger prospects limp along at the majors so as not to like, oh, you failed or some approach there. I hope the White Sox are comfortable in giving the shot. If the shot doesn't take, pushing back down like they have with some of the lesser prospects.
It's all about how you approach those conversations. It's like, we're doing this for XYZ reasons. Don't panic. Don't forget. That's where the mental side of the game becomes such an important piece of it, is like understanding you're not going back down just because you struck out this percentage of time. It's like, we saw something you need to work on. It's going to be easier to work on it when you're not facing the best of the best every single day. Because these guys don't often screw up. And once you're at this level, like, yeah, there's an element to being there every day and getting that experience. But if you're just outmatched and there's something you can be working on, like that's how you have to approach that conversation as a player. That's how you mentally have to be able to approach it. Easier said than done. Obviously, there have been plenty of prospects who have had that issue and just can't work out of it. But that I think that's where you almost have to approach it from that aspect. Then, to your point completely.
That totally makes sense. Now let's skip to a less happier note here out of these questions. Let's assume this is a total hypothetical, Jordan, but let's assume that the owner of the team that we love actually understood sunk costs. If that owner did understand that, what would you do with Andrew Benintendi?
Benintendi, when you gave me this question, I was like, yeah, you just get rid of it. Sunk cost, whatever. Yeah, but it's hard because you look into the numbers of it, and it's like, I was surprised to see like, oh, expected statistics were way better than the current ones. I'm like,
I brought this question up to you specifically because of this, because anytime I tweet something negative about Andrew Benintendi, there's a Twitter account that has like 11 followers that's probably either his dad, his Gumar, or maybe it's him saying, hey, he's been unlucky. The expected stats are high. And they're right. They're 100% right. I'm not negating them, but it does put an interesting spot.
Correct. And it is an example of like, okay, but why do they say that? Are you really getting that unlucky? There's still that element to it. Right. The thing with Benintendi, there's there's been a change in approach in terms of how often he's trying to pull the baseball. The problem is when he's pulling he's pulling it more than he has in the past several years. The problem is 62% of the time it's on the ground. So it's like you're trying to do something different, which in theory, I think we've all said this. Like, oh, hey, if you had more pull power and you tried this, I made that argument when they signed him. Like, hey, they probably saw terrible place to hit home runs in Kansas City. You try some of that pull power in Chicago, it might work a lot better. Right now, it's either he's trying it and it's not working, or he's just literally rolling over everything. So it's a difficult question. I think if there's an element of he's trying to change some things, what's the harm in continuing to work through it? Mm-hmm. But the flip side of that is what are you getting to? Like, what are you trying to get him back to? Is it just adequate? Like, just adequate on this team does what for you? That's the problem. It's like, by the time they're good in maybe a year or two, he's at the end of the contract. You know, you're towards the end of a contract that you probably hadn't add an extra year just to get him here.
Yep.
He shouldn't be considered your top performer at $15 million, but he typically is going to be. What are you? It is such a hard question. Until somebody pushes the envelope and says, yes, you can. You're just going to have to sit it out. I guess you just keep running him out there.
Yeah.
I almost like the Jose Abreu approach of tell the dude, listen, go back to the minors for a little bit, swallow your pride, and
figure some shit out.
Because this is bad. Like, you look bad, and if it's not an approach thing that's an issue, you look awful. So fix it in the minors, swallow your pride, and we'll bring you back up there. I almost don't hate that idea.
Yeah, I mean, just to get something. I mean, I also thought about. I liked your approach there in this discussion. I thought about it like, close my eyes. If you could snap your fingers and you can get whatever was projected of Andrew Benintendi this year, starting now going forward, would I be good enough just with that? With him killing opportunities for Dominic Fletcher to actually be out there and see if we have anything there? And I don't know. I'm not even sure about that. And I've been a big proponent of, for fuck's sake, if the Andrews would just get back to their norms, this team would be totally fine. They'd be bad, but they wouldn't be real bad. They'd be just a total regular bad team. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, we're running out of time for me caring about that anymore. Like, I in a way, the utility of his plate appearances, I'm watching Corey Jokes this past weekend and playing really well in left field. It's like, and rob a home run, some shit that Benintendi wouldn't do, and hit a home run, things that Benintendi rarely does. So it's I don't know if I'm getting too much of my feelings about how I'd like to see some other stuff going on, and I almost feel like the Benintendi thing is a past era, but yeah, it's a tough question. I like your response though. If we can Jose Abreu him, send him back to Arizona. Hey, work on it at the complex for 3 weeks, right? And then we'll see what you got.
At a certain point, this is rock bottom. Like, I can sit and try and make a defense from the statistics as much as I want, but this is rock bottom for a major leaguer. And it's like, it's not just a slump to start the season. It's May 20th. We've been here a little bit. So again, a major leaguer in Abreu, a long-time lifer, younger or older than Benintendi, swallowed his pride and went and did it. It's like, it sounds ridiculous on the surface, but sometimes you just need that moment away. And it's like, you're not doing anything for us at this level right now.
Right.
So go figure it out and hope you can at least get back to being league average and going from there.
Be a huge help. Let's get to this drink right now. Father Zoe, he says, Jordan, how many times when you're coaching do you get asked, what position do you play? He says, stay handsome, love you nerds. So cheers, so appreciate you.
Quick story about the amount of times I've been standing like outside the dugout. Yeah. And umpires go, all players need to be in the dugout. I'm like, I am one of the coaches. I don't need. I am a coach. I can stand outside the dugout. So I know it's a joke, but it's really not a joke. Like, I do have to deal with it.
So, someone inside the White Sox organization, who I will not name, said some very nice things about you and your coaching. So I just want to let you know. I want to pass that compliment along. I'm not going to spoil who it was, but I think you could probably figure it out yourself, and you will know exactly who's telling you that. But that's
At least somebody thinks it.
it was cool to hear. The person's like, "Do you know Jordan Lazowski?" Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, he's a good
great.
coach. So good shit all around there. All right, so we are now at the point that we determined, and it's funny that I gave you this question before this happened, because the White Sox determined they're at the point where they don't need Brad Keller anymore. It's possible we're going to get to the point soon where they determine they don't need Mike Clevenger anymore. Mm-hmm. And there you go with your starting pitchers kind of going away, being eschewed. Who do you give the next opportunities to, and in what order? And the guys I listed currently are Nick Nastrini and John Cannon, who both have had opportunities so far this year, and they're guys have been in AAA. And then two guys that have been absolutely crushing in AA. Drew Thorpe, who was the big get in the Cease deal, and then Mason Adams, who's not a highly touted prospect, but has been dominating in AA. How would you start dulling this out, Jordan, as we get to a point where we start shedding some veteran pitchers and realize that let's start looking at the future?
I think if you go with the way that Chris Getz has kind of shown he might do it, you would see the Mason Adams of the world first. Those guys that, probably aren't the top prospects in the world, might have the stuff to be there, kind of be a back end of the rotation guy, see what you got. This is a long tangent. I'm not the world's biggest Drew Thorpe fan yet. Okay. So I don't want to necessarily.
Oh, wow, how come? I want to hear why. Why are you not the biggest fan? Let's dig in right here. I want to know this because people are wowed by the changeup, Jordan, and people who aren't even big change-up guys. I would say, oh, you're not someone who's like was rooting for Trevor Hoffman or whatever every time. But people are really kind of impressed at what is deemed a 70 or some places 80 grade pitch.
My concern is it's not that he's not like Duke and I have this argument all the time. It's not that I don't think he'll be a major league pitcher. I'm just lower on the ceiling. I guess I equate him more to like a Dane Dunning of the world, to where Dane Dunning was super highly touted, partially because of the changeup. And for me, it's the speed differential between a non-overpowering fastball, but a good changeup. You've seen what happened to Giolito when he hit that velo dropped a little bit. Yeah. And it's just, if you don't have that overpowering fastball, these are major league hitters. Like AA hitters are good. They're not great. Single A hitters are okay. It's like, I would like to see him challenged more, but I would also like to see if they can find a way to tick up the velocity mile an hour or two. Now, if he starts throwing 93, 94, 95 consistently, this is a completely different conversation. Right. If he's going to sit 90, 91, 92, we have a really good case of what happened with Giolito in terms of how you're going to pitch like that. Yep. So I'm not going to pretend to be a prospect expert. I'm just going from the standpoint of having major league comps that are available to like, hey, great changeup, not overpowering fastball. The White Sox had one of those with Giolito towards the end. It's like the case from when he had the velocity to when he didn't, it was a huge change. So that's long story short. I'd like to see him maybe develop a little bit more in the minor leagues, maybe try and find a little bit more velo. Okay. And then see what happens. I probably wouldn't push him. So for Thorpe, you would not rush him. Thorpe, you'd say, all right, we need to build up some velo on this fastball. We need to work you out a little bit more. We need to figure out where it's at. Okay. Right. I would, and if it's just, hey, we're going to sit 92 to 93, fine. Then we have got to hammer command, and really good, a really good third pitch off of the fastball changeup combination and go from there. Mason Adams of the world, those types of guys are the ones I would move next. I'd give Cannon, Nastrini, Adams, the first opportunities from them. Jake Eater, I might even just say, let's just see what he can do at the What does it look like here? Right. What does it look like here? So those types of guys that maybe aren't your most coveted prospects, but guys that are at least worth a look based on their production at the minor league level. Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I did like that approach too, is that Cannon got a shot kind of quickly. I assume like someone like Sean Burke, if he wasn't hurt, would be like in the realm of like getting a chance here. And that was similar to what they did I think it was in 2022 when they brought Davis Martin. And Davis Martin looked good. I mean, like he had his stats don't look good because he had the real bad start in the last game of the year when he was likely hurt during that start and it kind of blew up all his numbers. But before that, he looked good. And then like finding stuff like that they still don't have enough stars bubbling up, but
finding those other parts bubbling up, that at least is going to make the thing watchable for me for 81 games at home when it starts happening.
Yeah, that still remains my concern. Is I feel like this is a team of a bunch of threes in the rotation still long term.
Right.
It's like I would like to see them find the ace, develop the ace. Schultz is there, but he's still a little bit ways away.
Yeah.
So it's like even the immediate future feels like a rotation of threes. And we've seen the Cardinals try that enough to know it's like it's fine, but and then the same thing with Montgomery's the star, and I feel like the rest of the guys, you still want one or two more. Like, even though they didn't work out, the Moncada, Robert, Jimenez, it's like, whoa, this is coming. Even though it didn't work, it's like at least you had that.
The threat of it. Exactly. Right now you have Edgar Caro, and that's the only guy who you're like thinking, oh, okay, that guy could actually be an impact bat,
Right, and that's at a position where you don't really need to be an impact bat. So
I mean, we'll take it, but yes,
we'll absolutely take it. But so that is still the thing where it's what some guys you think might be those star types. Maybe Drew Thorpe is a front of the rotation guy. Maybe I am completely wrong.
Yeah.
Give him the time to develop into that, though. I don't think it's necessary to see him this season.
Okay.
That's the Jerry Iriartes of the world, kind of the same idea. Guys who have super, super good stuff that might be cracking top 100 prospect lists and stuff like that. Maybe, but probably not.
Put them back in the oven. Get the guys who are off the top hundreds who look like they might have something. Take the model of there is no such thing as a pitching prospect, and let's see what they got. They're getting outs in Double-A.
Right.
Let's see if they can get outs in Chicago.
Right. And the reality is, too, it's like there are certain pitchers you probably don't want here, too. Like the whole idea that the defense was going to be that much better, it isn't.
Right.
So why are you going to destroy a young pitcher's confidence in himself? That's why it's like even the Jonathan Cannons of the world.
Right.
Like, this poor guy's got to go out there and just know this defense that they said was going to be better is still the worst in baseball.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating to put those guys in that situation. That's should be a consideration, I think, at least as well, is who are the guys we don't want to just run out there and them get shelled, partially because of who's behind them rather than just their stuff.
Right. Yeah, no question about that. Well, yeah. I mean, I hope that is the approach taken, because it would be nice to find out someone is a guy, even if they're a 4-star or a 5-star. Okay, well, at least they're going to log some innings for us. We got something to hang our hat on right here. So far I've actually enjoyed the attempts they've made in the Bannister regime, because they do try a bunch of stuff, and then when it doesn't work, they put Chris Flexen in the bullpen, and he gets some shit right, and then he has a few good starts, and he had a clunker this past weekend, but at least they're making some attempts. It looks like it looks like a different mechanism than it has to me so far, at least.
Agreed. And I think something along the lines of that is just finding guys who might play up a little bit better in the bullpen. Flexen might have played up a little bit better. Soroka, now they're kind of at that point. Now he's throwing 97s. It's like
right.
There's something to that part of it as well, to where, that will organically create opportunities too. It maximizes the guys who are there. It's not just, oh, they suck, let's get rid of them. It's, okay, let's try him here, open up an opportunity for another person, and kind of organically create that as well.
Yeah, no, I love the approach so far. Last of my initial 5 questions. My guy Brian Ramos is that's my play cousin, by the way. He's likely to be back next week. My question to you is he your third baseman until Yoan Moncada's back?
Yes. Is he the third baseman after that?
That's a question. Yeah, after that, is he your third base? No. Is it no?
I don't believe, like, he had like a good week at Double-A before coming straight up. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he had a couple good games. I think if Sox fans kind of took a look under the hood, they'd see that, this is going to start crashing down on itself a little bit sooner than later. The defense is still a little bit of an issue. Early defensive metrics haven't been kind to him, but it's a small sample size. Totally unfair. It's just more so unless he came up and lit the world on fire for 3-4 weeks, I probably don't need. I don't want. He's on that cusp of. He might be one of the really, really big dudes for this next rebuild. He's not necessarily just a complimentary piece. He could go either way still.
Okay.
I'd rather him have the time to develop, fix some things, go from there. Really feel like he got confident Double-A, and then go from there. I will say though, just like in terms of chase rates and just general contact, he's been very good.
I was gonna say, he doesn't, from the eye test, he does not look overmatched to me.
Correct.
He looks like he understands the strike zone. To me, his main problems were impacting the ball hard enough on a regular basis and hitting the ball into the ground way too much, which is a White Sox thing where it felt like, oh my God, this guy's hitting another ground ball. Like, get to some of this power. You're 6'2", you're a big man. Like, get the ball up in the air, my friend.
And the impacting the ball to stuff is interesting. StatCast and Baseball Savant just came out with like the bat speed metrics and stuff like that. And he's above average in that, but not real. He's above average for the team in that. It's like not overall overwhelming in terms of like bat speed and impacting the ball. It's not a perfect correlation, but like when you see Luis Robert is at the top of average
that makes
bat
sense.
Speed, and you see how he hits the baseball, there's correlation there. It's not perfect, but it's at least something where it's worth pointing that out. So another thing was like 70 mile an hour average bat speed. Luis Robert Jr. is 77 miles. Just so people have an idea of the gap. It's league average-ish, a little bit below it. So maybe that's something where he gets a little bit stronger, gets a little bit more mature in approach, and then impacts the ball a little bit better from there. But that was another thing that seeing those, and I had this, it's like he's hitting the ball, but it's not really doing anything like you'd need a third baseman to.
Yeah, correct. And just to inform the audience, the spread, especially on the qualified hitters, the spread from top to bottom in the bat speed metrics that came out recently, you have Giancarlo Stanton at the top at like 80 miles per hour. So Luis is kind of butting up against that. The guys at the bottom, I think Luis Ariz was the guy at the very bottom at about 64%. And the bottom guys were a lot of contact hitters. And so some of what I wonder about this data is, because we don't know a lot about it yet, it kind of has just made its way out there, is how much of it is approach based and how much of it is, because like I know when I watch Giancarlo Stanton bat, he's swinging from the heels every pitch. And when I watch Ariz bat, he's trying to make contact every time. So there's probably some variability in what guys, what their maxes are and what kind of what differences are. But you're right there. It's not the bat speed there metric is not overwhelming or exciting in any way, shape, or form. It just seems like it's ordinary.
And you're right. It's more so it's like it doesn't mean because the bat speed is this, he is going to be. It is not a correlation. No. It's more so it's like if he's going to be
it's just one data point.
Right. It's like if that's one data point, maybe he's this kind of hitter. It's like, all right, well, if he's going to be more of a guy who maybe doesn't make the loudest impact in the world, which probably isn't fair if you look at his AA numbers. It's like now does he become a second baseman where that's a little bit more palatable of an offensive profile? Or is it something where, he develops a little bit more power with his age and goes from there? Those are the sort of things where it's nice to get little pieces of what he's done, but as a total offensive profile, it just doesn't feel complete enough yet to leave him here when there are true major league options on the roster.
Right. When that happens. But right now, I feel like he is good enough to be a part of whatever this is.
Correct.
All right,
Moncada will at least push it out. And if they can bring up Montgomery and shift DeYoung,
there's some then you have some options. That's right. Let's get to this drink right here. John Nava says, and this is a question for you, Jordan. Does Ramos go back to AA or move to AAA when you do decide that you're going to move him on? And he says, cheers. Thank you, John. Appreciate you.
Great question. With Jacob Gonzalez now moving to AA, they got a lot of middle infield guys. Someone also mentioned Brooks Baldwin, who's going to need to move around, play some other positions. If they're trying to get playing time for everybody, probably third base. If they want to do a confidence thing, send him back to AA, let him light it up for a little bit, then move him to AAA. I don't think either one's a wrong answer necessarily, though.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. All right. As we mentioned, 25% of the season is over. It is in fact a long ass season. Just a couple questions. I want to take your temperature on what you've learned from just ingesting this team so far. First off, what have you learned so far about the Bannister / Ketzlab pitching program in the 2024 season? What we've seen so far.
It's really interesting because they've taken a lot of different pitchers who do a lot of different things. Like maybe they prioritize the more pitch contact guys, Eric Feddes, Chris Flexens. But then they've also truly developed a power pitcher in Garrett Crochet. And I think it was fascinating that they decided on a cutter being the most prevalent next pitch to add for him. Versus
Don Cooper's somewhere so happy right
now. Exactly. It's very weird where it's like, okay, we hadn't seen that, but it checks out. It makes sense if everything's moving a certain way and such and such. Just the profiles of it. I like that they worked hard on the changeup with that as well. I think in general, the one strategy I do, and I don't know where it falls on Bannister, Katz, Getz, the idea of moving guys to the pen and maybe just leaving them there, I'd prefer that almost, like Soroka and Flexen. I like that they did that. Not that they really had another option other than continuing to
Just
run them out there.
Or
But
release them.
the other option is the DFA route. Like they DFA'd Keller, so there's clearly a differentiating between like bad performances that they move to the pen versus they DFA. So there is a difference for them. So my thought was watching Flexen do pretty well in the bullpen and watching Soroka now throwing harder in the bullpen. Maybe that sort of the difference in ideas that I kind of like. Maybe it's the team being terrible that affords it that.
Right.
But at the same time, I also love watching Eric Fetty pitch. Truly. And I know they were kind of there with him.
It's a bit of a throwback because he can attack hitters in various different ways. And it's like you're watching what in the old days we'd call, this guy is a real pitcher, not a guy who just throws hard and kind of blows people away. It does make it fun. I agree.
Correct. And I think it's just they've done a really, really good job of taking a lot of different guys who do a lot of different things. And I feel maximizing it. Like Crochet's a good example. Fetty's a great example. Fetty probably did a ton of that himself, but still it's in the realm of a team. The only thing that I'm still trying to figure out is Michael Kopech a little bit. I think it's been a little frustrating for me because you see these guys who are like, they're turning into true like pitchers. Like you have Fetty, you have Flex, you have Soroka. You have a lot of these true pitchers on the roster. Even Crochet is turning more into a pitcher who just happens to throw really hard. But then you have just Kopech going out there throwing 100 and it going all over the place. Like that is not like coinciding with what you guys have created in so many other places. It's like for so much of the season, the fastball has been like 75% usage. It's like you're not going to be able to survive on that. Like teams will see your fastball, love it. They will get something in a trade for him. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in terms of how they're using him now, I don't love that quite yet. What I will say about it, Kopech too, the idea that they've tried making him a multi-inning type closer at times, even though it really hasn't worked. I like that too.
Yeah, I do too.
I think between all of those different pieces, they've tried some different things. They're taking a lot of guys and maximizing what they have and not trying to fit round pegs into square holes and everything like that. And I've actually really enjoyed watching some of the guys I really didn't think I'd enjoy pitch. It's a credit to them.
Well, it is funny to watch Kopech with his specific strategy. And then right next to him, Jordan Leisure is kind of operating in a similar strategy where he's throwing a lot of fastballs, but he's not striking anyone out. But he's also not really walking the ballpark, and he's getting a lot of outs. I mean, I know he got taken deep today, but otherwise, he has basically been their best reliever throughout this, and he's been a guy with a big fastball, but not overpowering. It's like a throwback in a way, because the old closers wouldn't strike everybody out. They'd get a pop-up or a ground ball, and next thing you know, we're out of the ninth inning. It was interesting to watch them operate, and it almost feels like they're starting to have more confidence in Leisure in that closer role as they do with Kopech because of the volatility.
It's cool how you see a guy slowly morph and the team trusts them more, because Leisure's coming in the fifth inning when he comes up.
Start the year,
slowly getting later and later and later. And it's cool to see that from a pitching development standpoint of just, and I hope this is a strategy. There is one thing I like about this, and it's a good strategy of, as much as I didn't like it at the time, like guys who like a Soroka who might have been, he was, I mean, we had the conversation early in the year when you were on our podcast. Like you were high on him. I'm like, I don't see it yet. But now if his stuff is going to play up in the bullpen, okay, now that's a different strategy of, hey, either give a guy a shot or tell him, hey, we think your stuff's going to play up in the pen. Let's try this. I think that would be a more interesting strategy for building a bullpen if they were to use it than the route of $7-8 million for a reliever. Because you can't develop every single reliever. You're going to need to.
You're going to have to buy someone eventually. Yeah, that's
right.
correct. Yeah.
And if you can do it for $1 million, $2 million, and it happens to be a guy who is a longtime starter, a veteran guy, pitched in the rotation, but is now going to, at a point in his career where it's going to play up in the bullpen, I kind of like that strategy too. This could be me giving them way too much credit, but these are the type of things that I'm like, interesting.
No, I would give them this much credit on that side of the equation there. You know, I told Teresi, I'm like, look, if Soroka's going to throw this hard in the bullpen, just tell him. Just tell him to pitch with his hair on fire every time he's in. So
do that.
If you start him and say, if you only get 3 innings, fine, get out of here. And Treasy's like, Tanner Banks for the first inning, and then Sorka, you come in and you throw 97 until you can't anymore.
Right.
And let's see what happens. And they haven't gone that far as to try to mess with a lot of those types of strategies yet, but I hope that they are open to them. But I agree with you, Jordan. If he becomes just a 2-inning guy in the bullpen that throws 97, I think he'll be highly effective because
that's
a lot of his stuff was the lack of velocity, having to be too fine and just getting hit in the strike zone. The slider, they haven't hit the slider all year.
No.
It's the other pitches that have been killing him.
And what's crazy that's too is I remember watching him the first couple starts. I'm like, that slider is awesome. Why isn't the rest of the stuff matching that?
Right.
It's at a certain point, you're just at a certain point in your career where you have to be too fine and you don't have that command that you used to or whatever just go throw hard in the bullpen. Because he has good stuff. He has better stuff than I thought he was going to have. But at the same time, it's very clear that it's worth a bullpen shot versus trying to maximize a 5-6 inning start.
I totally agree. Let me get to this drink right here. Dougie Freshness says, sorry I'm late, fellas. Cheers. Thank you, Dougie. Appreciate you. I hope you recovered from the 999 challenge last Friday. I didn't see it because I'd been out to dinner, and then the White Sox Twitter wars broke out. But I heard that you were struggling. So thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
We'll never try that, ever.
Me either. I can handle the beers. I'm not drinking it. I'm not eating that many hot dogs.
9 hot dogs.
That's not. You'll be.
No.
I mean, just sweating. I'm gonna have a heart attack. I don't want. I'm not giving that a shot at all. So, all right. Last question on this. Let's flip it over to the other side. The offense has been a total abomination so far. Even when they were playing well and got a little bit hot, it still did not get them out of the cellar when you look at OPS plus and WRC plus. They are still the worst offense in baseball through the 25% of the year, the quarter pole, if you will. What have you learned, if anything, so far about this offense, Jordan?
I have maybe just because the lineup is so much different than it's been. For the first time, it's maybe this hitting coach and Marcus Timms might work with a better team. Ground ball rate, they're back to the middle of a pack. Now, granted, not that much better. It's still only 3 percentage points difference from where they've been.
Right.
But now they're in the middle of the pack versus they're at the bottom of the list when it comes, or the top of the list when it comes to ground ball rate. That's something that is an immediate eye catcher for me. The other one, swing rate, which is outside the zone swing percentage, chase rate, essentially. Yep. It's the lowest it's been since 2021. It's still middle of the pack. They're not leading in these categories,
right?
But it's moving in a direction. I'm okay, there's one or two things. We're going to have to look at guys like Gavin Sheets over the course of this year and Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert to see if it's really just,
correct.
Hey, brought in different players and the numbers changed, or if there are legitimate changes being made. Eloy Jimenez will be the first case of nothing's changed.
Right, exactly. So exactly the same. Too many ground balls, all this stuff. Yes.
Right. That is the first argument in opposition of what I just said.
Yeah.
It is something, but it's at least gotten to the point where I will be curious at the end of a season when you have a full year of data, if anything looks different for some of these guys. Because at least some trends right now have me thinking, all right, they're not chasing as much. But they're still not doing the things like hitting home runs. They're not doing that stuff either, but they didn't build a team that was going to do that. So it's hard to find. With the offense, it's so much harder because the pitching, you can at least, I feel truly evaluate Bannister and Katz and the work they've done. Hitting, it's so much harder because it's when Brandon Shoemake's taking all your opportunities and Martin Maldonado's still there hitting. What is happening
That's
here?
That's going to drag the whole group.
Right. Exactly. How many home runs did I think they were going to hit if those guys were getting the at-bats?
That's true.
The other guy that will be worth looking at is Corey Lee. What does Corey Lee end up being at the end of the year? He's, at least at this point, a backup catcher in the future. At a minimum.
He's on your roster. He's probably playing half the games, roughly.
Right. So can you, by the end of this season, have enough of a sample size to say, okay, here are some legitimate changes he's made since his time in the minor leagues with Houston and the White Sox, to say, yes, there were changes made, or just you got enough time in the major leagues to adjust to it. I don't know if it'll be either one of those, but I think at least for now, I'm encouraged by trends. The problem is with only a month and a half worth of data, is it because the team has just been overhauled, or there's differences in approaches for guys. Robert hasn't been healthy. Jimenez hasn't been healthy. Moncada hasn't been healthy. The guys you would test it against haven't created or haven't accumulated enough data to make a decision either way.
Right.
So,
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I haven't heard much from Marcus Thames outside of like the very beginning.
That
of
is
the year.
another thing too.
It's interesting. Well, and it is interesting from two perspectives. One, we haven't heard anything about him saying anything of anyone, and I guess no one's digging in, or maybe he's not making himself available or whatever. But I also haven't heard Sox fans bagging on the hitting coach at all.
Yeah,
like, and that's a weird thing because they're hammering absolutely everybody, and hey, deservedly so. This team stinks. But they have kind of stayed away from him, and I don't know if maybe it's his strategy. I'm gonna stay out of the limelight. Let's work on our things behind the scenes, and no one will know I'm here.
They got enough people to yell at. Just let them keep yelling at those guys. Don't forget about me.
That's absolutely right. Well, Jordan, thanks so much for sharing your decision-making thoughts on Colson Montgomery, young pitching, tradable veterans, Andrew Benintendi, Brian Ramos, and much more. Remember, we ain't trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Do you have anything you want to plug before you go?
Yeah, I'm definitely not trying to be right. I haven't been right since 2018. Sox on 35th is always what I love to plug. You know where I am at J Lazowski 14 at Sox on 35th. We're doing what everyone's doing, trying to do what we can at this time of year. It is rough sailing, trying to record these podcasts. It's always just, oh my God, what are we going to talk about this week? But at the same time, we're all going through it. We appreciate everyone's support. Yep. We're all struggling together. So I appreciate the time you're given to not only do this with me, but do it every week and with the rest of the 108 guys. Like Sox content at this point, people doing it all the time. It shouldn't go unappreciated from people. So.
It's a battle out here for us. It's a battle out here for all of us that are doing it. That's correct. All right, Jordan, take care, my friend. Good seeing you.
Thanks
Good
so
talking
much, people. Take care.
You too. That was Jordan Lazowski. That was a fun conversation, as it always is with Jordan. Next week's guest, it's Memorial Day, and actually I'm planning to go to the game. I thought about trying to get Treasy on here, and we just do a little back and forth with just me and him. We might be a little liquored up because we've been at the ballpark, so we'll see how that goes. I do have guests coming up and future dates, and we'll announce some of that stuff sooner rather than later, but not tonight. So I just want to say thanks to Punky's Pizza and Pasta and all the 108 family who was up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you smashing the like button, comments, and of course drinks and tips. I love all of you, and we'll see you on Thursday night with what's gonna be. Oh, hang on, before I go, Clutch Hat Trick. Thank you for the drink. Appreciate you, my friend. We will be back on Thursday night with the 108 podcast, but it will be pre-recorded because we're going to be at the White Sox game